Welcome to another FAQ Monday. I am your host, Fluff. I'm also the manager here at FAQ Monday headquarters. The bathroom's over there. There's a hallway, vending machine that dispenses guitar strings. You know, the huge. If you have a question, feel free to leave them down below in the comments, or if you'd like to do it anonymously, head on over to the Ask FM link in the description, and maybe you will end up on a future FAQ Monday. First question, Final Cut Pro X versus Adobe Premiere Pro, which do you prefer? Interesting that I always get these questions when I'm in a transitional period, because after a year and a half of being a diehard Adobe Premiere user, I have gone back to Final Cut Pro simply because Premiere Pro 2015 doesn't work randomly because they keep trying to update and the audio locks up, so it prevents playback. And when you can't play back a video in a video editing program, that causes huge problems. I've done several FAQ Mondays where I've been in the middle of them and playback just simply doesn't work anymore, sorry. And I've had to go over to Final Cut Pro to finish the video and basically start over. And I was in the final straw was when I was in the middle of the Tone City pedal demo video. And I was making all these cuts and I was doing the song part and it doesn't play back video anymore, sorry. And I was furious and I just gave up on it. And I probably won't go back anytime soon. I'm really enjoying Final Cut Pro. They fixed a lot of the stuff that I personally had a problem with. For example, you couldn't add a value to the amount of rotation that something had prior. Now you can. Now there's a rotation wheel and you can add just the value. You can add the value to a lot of things. There's pros and cons to both of them. There's no hotkey to zoom in and out like there is on Adobe, but you know, take some, you lose some, I suppose. But for me personally, I'm with Final Cut Pro right now. Adobe is awesome for their suite and their Creative Cloud suite. I still use it, I still love it, but Premiere, it doesn't work on my computers, and neither does 14 anymore. So for the time being, flame on if you want to, but Final Cut Pro is the way to go. What do you think of Andy James? Mindless shredder, or do you think his work actually has some substance? Andy James is anything but a mindless shredder. That guy has flavor. If he was food, he would be a real nice top sirloin steak, and there would be a side of A1 sauce ready and willing. You know what I mean? It really didn't make any sense, but I'll give you an example. When I was at NAMM, I think it was 2014, NAMM 2014, I'm walking by the DV Mark booth, and I hear this playing that had such panache, if I can use that word, and flair, but wasn't overly flashy. I don't like flashy, you guys know. The Yingbe stuff, the just rudimentary kind of stuff, I am not a fan of. So I'm walking by the DV Mark booth, and it's Andy James warming up. Now he is playing doing these bends, these super emotional bends, and the hilarious part was Andy is staring off into space, like this. And just like kind of like looking around, just he was warming up, but even on his warm-ups were just, oh, it was so awesome. He's like a good cross between my favorite elements of Paul Gilbert with, I don't know, kind of like a Zakk Wylde, Doug Aldrich, Sykes kind of thing. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I used to get told a year or two ago that I could be a great, like, his rhythm guitarist in his band or something like that. I always thought, that's an awesome compliment. But yeah, no, if you aren't familiar with Andy James, check out Andy James. Dude is just brilliant, awesome, I'm a huge fan. With so many amps, why the dual rec with your new band? There are a few reasons why I go with a dual rectifier versus many of my, what would arguably be much more desirable amps with my band, Rest Repose. First is, if I'm playing smoky bars and smoky clubs, there's always a risk of getting your stuff stolen, and I am not bringing out a $3,500 Rhodes Gemini to a bar to have it get stolen, because the loss is much greater then, as opposed to getting a 95 dual rectifier stolen, if that makes any sense. And secondly, the style of setup that I wanted a looper, a programmable looper with some effects and a pedal board, and that I could easily switch with that pedal board. And if I use one of these complicated, MIDI capable amps, I would need a MIDI switching system to do everything I wanted to, and I don't want that. And I just keep everything on the pedal board, and do everything there, so there's nothing behind me but the amp and the cab. These other amps, like the Mototone Vader, like a Marshall Plexi style or 800 style amp, I would love if it had a second channel. So it's really a case of too many channels or not enough channels. So it's fine. The dual rectifier, you know, I used to fantasize about playing a dual rectifier when I was a kid. I used to watch, you know, look at the ads of the Armadillo on the dual rectifier when in the Guitar Worlds and think, I will never play a dual rectifier in my life. I'll never be able to afford one. And here I am with my Gibson RD and my dual rectifier half stack from the 90s. So that element is pretty cool too. So like my inner 14-year-old still needs to be satisfied before I try anything else. But for now, old 2-channel modified dual rectifier is what suits me best. I suggest to you this week checking out the brand new Sword album, High Country. It is amazing, and before you go and listen to it, just know it is not the huge, super saturated, groovy headbang fest. This album, in my opinion, is what happens after the show. When you go home and you drink a beer or partake in something else, and you mellow out a little bit, and they turn the distortion and they turn the overdrive on their amps way, way down, and it's kind of a mellow record, and I really, really dig it. It really brings out the songwriting, and this is probably my favorite album of theirs since Age of Winters. I gotta say it. It's amazing. I got it on vinyl. I listen to it almost every day, and I go to sleep to the Sword as well. So I just love this album, and I think you will too. You have been wonderful. I've been Fluff. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Check, 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 check. Audio, video, hot coffee. Coffee's hot.